Welcome to Real Talk in ELT, a podcast that talks about the reality of teaching English. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk in ELT. Today I am by myself, but I have got for you something motivated by a question that I was asked recently, which was talking about professional development and new teachers and coming into the profession. And it's funny because I actually don't I consider myself a new teacher still. So I don't really, it was weird to have that question asked. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm like at the beginning of the mid-range of my career, perhaps. I mean, hopefully I have quite a few more years left in me, but I do still consider myself relatively new in the industry. But in that perspective, I feel as if I might have some qualifications in talking about challenges that new teachers face and how to find support, since I'm still kind of struggling my way through that as well. So first things first, let's kick it off with some 10 challenges that new teachers face and how you can get support for that. All right. So the first thing is that there is, and I've written these down just so I don't get lost. I tend to get lost. I get a little verbose, you know how it goes. The first one that I scribbled down here was the difficulty of transitioning from student to teacher and the expectations that come with that transition. So as I work with mostly teachers who are not native, I know we don't like this term, but there's no other way of describing it, native speakers of English, that transition from being a language student and perhaps going to university or doing training courses and becoming a qualified professional, so student, and now you're running the classroom, you're the head of the classroom. The expectations is that you walk into the classroom and you know what you're doing. And that's lofty, because I still walk into classrooms and I feel as if I don't know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for over 12 years now. So it's kind of like, sometimes I walk into a classroom and it's like, I don't feel like I'm the sage on the stage, I guess I can say. So kind of wrestling with those, in terms of now, there is an expectation, whether, we like it or not, but there is an expectation from the students, from the people that you're working with, that you are an expert in whatever you've been studying. And hopefully in our case, it is language and teaching. So there's that high expectation and it's the change of responsibility almost, that it's like, now it's up to you because people are going to be looking to you. So I think people struggle with that. In terms of dealing with that, mentally prepare yourselves. But truly mentally prepare yourself. If that means that you need to kind of talk to someone, find a friend, get a mentor, read a book that helps, kind of promote these feelings of leadership or something along those lines in your life. Therapy works. If you're open to it, therapy works. Again, you just kind of have to be mentally prepared for that transition, because now the expectations of you are different and people are looking at you in a different capacity. And so just kind of prepare yourself for that. Next, the importance of mentorship and support from experienced teachers and how lack of support can lead to burnout or early departure from the field. A lot of people get into this field, how can I say this diplomatically? I mean, not diplomatically, but like in a way that I'm really expressing what I think. So some people sidestep into the occupation, like myself. Some people fall into it. Some people, it's been, this elusive dream of theirs since for forever, so getting into it is interesting, but we do need to have that support, because whatever illusion you have in your head, purely based on ignorance and inexperience, with and ignorance not being a negative term in this situation. It's this scenario. It's you're just ignorant because you never experienced it before. Whatever scenario you've got in your head is going to be either reaffirmed or it's going to be burnt down to the ground. so you prepare for those possibilities. And I think that if you have someone there that you can just say like, yeah, that happens. I've been through that. Well, here's how I dealt with it, or here's how my colleagues dealt with it. And, you can kind of find your own way. I've found that once I've started and have had my mentoring programs going for a bit, that half the time in the mentorship, at least in the beginning part of the sessions, it's kind of like, am I crazy? It's like, no, that happens. Oh, that happened to me. Because we have this disillusioned idea of what it's going to be like. And then the reality of teaching is something quite different. And it depends on teaching context and things like that. I have been surprised over the years. It's been infrequent, but there have been some surprises where I'm like, wait, what? I don't even know. Oof, I guess we can brainstorm through that together and see how you can approach that scenario. But for the most part, teachers are surprised at the actual reality of teaching, because the idea of teaching and the reality of teaching sometimes are incongruent, and we have to align those or kind of balance it out in our head, all of those points. Yes, I guess we can say. So yes, I think mentorship helps, even if it's not in a formalized way or like a paid thing or anything like that. Find a friend, again, support experienced teachers, people who have been through it before, because then you've got this support system, and other people are much better at recognizing signs of burnout or when you're about to like quit altogether. Outsider perspective, right? And so sometimes they can kind of intervene and say, are you sure? Are you all right? You might need it to kind of like, hang on, maybe you shouldn't take on that project, etc. Because we've just seen it before, not through any wisdom that we have, or it's mainly just because I've seen people burn out, and the signs are pretty clear when you're one step removed from the situation. So the next one, next challenge for new teachers is the need for realistic expectations from colleagues and employers, and how these expectations can be adjusted to reflect the experience level of new teachers. I said this before on a colleague's podcast. I'll say it again. We demand too much from new professionals. We demand too much from them. Now, I'm not saying that anybody can walk into the classroom and do whatever they want and it's fine because they're new, so they can make mistakes willy-nilly. No. You need to have a base of information, you need to study, you need to learn. But at the same time, some things only come through experience. Some things come from knowledge, and you can search and you can read all the books and you can do all the stuff and you can participate in all the webinars and conferences and educational programs and trainings and all of that good stuff. You can do all of that before, and still you will be unprepared for some of the things that only come with experience. And so the expectations of other colleagues and the expectations of institutions, language schools, and things like that need to seriously be readjusted. And I've seen this a lot when it comes to how we talk to each other. The level, it's funny because as teachers, we grade our language for our learners, but we can't grade our language for our colleagues who are less experienced. Things to think about, So I would say where to find support for that, or how to deal with that type of situation, is have honest conversations. Not in that it can be very challenging, but have honest conversations with your colleagues, with institutions. Have very, very clear and explicit expectations drawn out, and make sure they make it clear that this is course, there's a motorcycle. It has passed. Okay. And make sure that their expectations are in alignment with the years of experience or the number of teaching hours you have under your belt, things along those lines. Because, when you first walk into the classroom, most of the time, it's just becoming familiar with that environment, a lot of classroom management issues. And you're not going to be thinking about things like reformulating the curriculum or the syllabus to better fit specific students' needs. I mean, that's not something that you can handle in the beginning, because you're still dealing with classroom management issues. So, okay. All right, next one, number 4, I think we're on. I don't even have these numbered. Sometimes I'm professional and sometimes I wonder about myself. Here we go. The next one is the impact of imposter syndrome on new teachers and how it can prevent them from seeking support and taking risks. I suffered from this a lot because I came from an area that was not education, and then I trampled my way in. I'm going to say trampled, like bull in the china shop, trampled my way into ELT. And I suffered a lot from imposter syndrome because I never considered myself a teacher. I still to this day have a lot of trouble considering myself as a true, genuine teacher. I know it's very weird, but I still am I don't know. I haven't really latched onto that persona just yet, but I'm working on it. This won't turn into a therapy session, I promise. So Kelly's psychological problems aside, yes, the imposter syndrome is real. People don't feel like they belong. A lot of people, especially because of the expectations of institutions and their colleagues, they feel as if they're inferior and they don't know what they should know these things, and that's unrealistic. Everybody kind of goes through their own journey in this world, in this world in general, but in the ELT world specifically. And so you have to be a little kind with yourself. And I would say that anything that is provoking this feeling of imposter syndrome, investigate it. And investigate it in a way that's very, how can I say this? Very structured. For example, someone says something, or a colleague mentions something, or there's a conversation that you hear, or you see something on social media of people talking about a specific topic. Don't run away from it. Just put it on the list and be like, well, from the list of things that I'm wholeheartedly just unfamiliar with in this, I have my list of my own. If I can find it, I'll share it with people. The list of things that I'm uncomfortable talking about because I don't feel I have enough knowledge to be able to contribute to the conversation. Instead of putting those aside and being like, I'm not going to engage in that, ask questions, because more often than not, other people have been quite kind to me. So I'll ask people, and it seems like a really silly question. I do this a lot, especially with people who have studied. I have a collection of friends that are extremely educated. I mean, like doctors and they just really, really academically well-versed in so many things. And they've dedicated obviously long hours into knowing those things. And so they'll say something which will completely go over my head. And I am shameless at this point. In the beginning, I was a little shy. I am absolutely shameless. I was like, oh, time out. Please explain to me what that is, because I have no even reference point of where to even go to find that information. So it's quite a humbling experience, obviously, because these are people that you think I can maybe conversations with at the same level. I can't. I know that I can't, but I'm more than willing to try and investigate and trying to get some more information for myself. So imposter syndrome is real, but instead of avoiding it, the things that prompt that imposter syndrome, I would say lean into them. That's how I've dealt with it, at least. Next, the challenges of classroom management and maintaining authority in the classroom when students may be older. or experienced, more experienced than the teacher. uh, yeah. So I've had experience of like teaching teachers too and all that good stuff. And I teach, I'm not one to brag, but for your information, I teach CEOs of multinational companies. And it's intimidating. It's like, oh my God. It's intimidating because they know their stuff. It's not like, someone who just is just going to listen to you, and which is good. I mean, I don't want my students to listen to me, but it's intimidating because they're very, very good and they're older and they're experienced and they've got a lot to contribute. And so instead of seeing it as classroom management challenges, I would encourage new teachers to look at that as a really cool content and material opportunity. Because they're older, they're more experienced, they've got some life in them, they can contribute a lot more to conversations within the classroom, to the content that you guys are talking about, just because they've got all of that experience, right? And so I think it's a really cool thing if you can look at that challenge as an opportunity, especially young teachers, people who feel age-wise that they're young compared to their students. They've got years of experience. Like, ask them about things. Well, how has it changed over the years? What's the difference here? What have you experienced? How is it different now? I mean, just use it as motivation and as an opportunity, as opposed to seeing it as, oh my gosh, this person expects me to know more than them, and how can I even compete with that? You can't. So hold, please. Dogs are a bargain. Okay. Next one, the need for professional development opportunities that cater specifically to new teachers, including training on lesson planning, classroom management, and assessment. So there are some key features and key things that teachers should know in the beginning of their career, like lesson planning, classroom management, and assessment, to name a few, that are very, very helpful and very, very practical. So I think one of the challenges is sometimes people, and this was one of the things that happened to me, was I was hired by a company to work with in-company classes, and I received zero training. Yeah, I know. It happens, whatever. It is what it is. And then I had zero training, and then I tried to figure it out as I went, and it wasn't super great. And then after a few years, I think I was like 5 years, I took the CELTA. Now, this is not propaganda for CELTA, but there are TESOL certifications, TEFL certifications that will help you with kind of the basic foundational ideas, skills that you need for forever. Lesson planning, classroom management, assessment are three of them that you will need for forever. So find courses like that. And I know that it can be expensive. I'm speaking from Brazil, so Brazil can be expensive to find these opportunities. Luckily, things have become more and more available online. There are a variety of places that you can go and find these things. There are the more formal initial courses for teachers that are more well recognized, I guess we can say, like CELTA and CERT TESOL. But there certainly are other programs that you can investigate in that, or individual module type of things that you can find online and educate yourself. There's a lot of the courses on educational platforms like edX and Coursera and all of those, where you can find courses that you can do for free if you don't need the certification for it. So yeah, just educate yourself on that, because it's practical teaching skills that you're going to need for the duration of your career. There are challenges of adapting to different cultural contexts and how this can impact your teaching experience. I welcome this. I think this is fun. But if you are comfortable in one cultural context, then stick to that until you kind of build up your teaching skills and you feel comfortable before switching to another one. Because there are differences, and if you're very comfortable in those foundational skills like classroom management and materials and kind of, organizing your classes and getting through task cycles and all of that good stuff, if you're comfortable with that, then you're only having to deal with one component as opposed to jumping around and and struggling with multiple. So I would say get your teaching skills foundations kind of level and solid. And then if you want to go into different cultural contexts, then of course, go off if you can, if that's a possibility. If it's not, then you're going to have to kind of struggle through it, balancing and juggling the different components. Sorry, I don't really have a great suggestion for that. So there are challenges of putting importance onto self-care and managing your stress, because this is a stressful profession. I don't know, it's a stressful profession. First of all, you're dealing with the public. And if anyone has ever worked in restaurants, in retail, in anything where you serve the public, you'll realize that it's quite stressful. But those interactions are very transactional, whereas in the classroom, typically it's not a one and done type of interaction. So we're dealing with the public, but also we're dealing with the public on a semi-permanent basis. So you have the human factor, which is challenging in itself. And then on top of that, you're dealing with the professional factor of your professional skills. And then additionally, the classroom is this messy little environment. It's a weird thing, but it's a messy little environment that you have to make a lot of decisions. So because you have to make a lot of decisions, that can cause quite a bit of stress. And if something else is not balanced out in terms of your teaching skills are not up to where they should be for the particular groups or people that you're teaching, or if the people that you're teaching are, for whatever reason, exceedingly challenging, then, it just leads to stress. So self-care and managing stress, I think, is something we have to kind of focus on and make sure that we don't overload ourselves too much, too quickly, taking on lots of classes. If you have to, deal with all of that. Again, just trying to keep things in balance, because we come out guns blazing, but at the same time, if you're in it for the long haul, then slow and steady wins the race, I would say. Next challenge, the role of ELT institutions in providing adequate support for new teachers, including mentorship programs, peer support, professional development opportunities. Yeah. I don't want to always, stick it to the institutions. That's not my objective here at all. But I do recognize that as a new teacher, you just don't know where to go. And sometimes colleagues will give you a good hint here and there. And other times you're just kind of floating in the abyss. And if you don't work for an institution that really values professional development and continuous growth, then sometimes you can be floating in the abyss for quite a while. If you're teaching privately and you're, freelancing, then it's all on you. And so networking comes into play. If you're not a social creature, if you're not a real social creature, like I'm not, I'm not super social. I mean, I am and I'm not. I have a weird characteristic, and I think that maybe some teachers can also kind of feel like me, where I don't really like people in general. This is going to get me canceled. I don't like people in general. I love individuals, meaning I don't like big crowds. It's just not my jam. So So yeah, going to like huge things sometimes is quite intimidating for me. Large social gatherings are not really fun for me at all. It just takes a lot of my energy. So if I go to those things, I'm usually sleeping for 12 hours afterwards. I was joking. I gave a training session recently, and I was training a group of 12 teachers. I believe there's like 12 teachers. And we were talking about students who are shy. And I told them that I was quite shy. And everybody laughed. I don't know why, but it was a little slightly offensive. Everybody laughed. They said, what are you talking about? You're shy. Because when I'm training, I'm quite personable, I think. I try to be nice and interactive with people. And I don't appear to be anxious. I guess that would be a best description of that. But it's quite demanding for me because there's multiple people and I'm dividing my energy, and it's just quite demanding for me. Anyways. And so I typically, after training sessions, I typically sleep hard for quite a few hours. Because it's draining. But then there's other people that are quite energized by going to social events and things like that. I happen not to fall into that category. Do I avoid it? No, I go. Do I genuinely like the interactions that I have with people? Absolutely. But I don't get energy from interacting with people. I lose it because I tend to give it. I don't feel energized afterwards. I mean, this might be like crystals and kumbayas and craziness for some people, but that's just my thought on it. So yeah, building a professional development network and things like that. Hopefully you have a network and an institution or yourself, that can provide these opportunities. But as new teachers, it's quite challenging, and it can be quite intimidating. So take that into consideration, that teaching is not a solitary occupation. And if you're like me, then you need to know that networking is a part of this, and you need to make friends and constantly be in touch with people and go to events and do things like that. And what I do is I know how I react to these things now, and I know that I need to space things out, because for me to get the full benefits of socializing with people, sounds like I'm a creep. I'm really not a creep, but to get the full benefits of those social interactions in large groups, then I need to kind of manage that and make sure that I do it in a beneficial way, not just kind of a superficial way. So. And finally, the last one is the need for more realistic and comprehensive job descriptions, which accurately reflect the expectations and responsibilities of the roles. We are doing a disservice in the industry by putting job descriptions together that is like entry-level teacher who requires a bunch of certifications that are not entry-level certifications, by the way. If it's an entry-level certification, then fine. But entry-level teaching position with non-entry-level certifications, and on top of that, we're going to pay you the bare minimum, industry standard bare minimum. So yeah, and then, but also the expectations of your role is that you have and can teach to the experience level of someone who has 10 years in the industry. But this is an entry level role. Not helpful for the industry. So, new teachers are new teachers. They have limited knowledge because they have limited experience. It doesn't mean that they're not good professionals. It just means that they need to have some support to get them to where they need to be. But there's always going to be waves of new professionals that come into the industry. And all of those new professionals that come into the industry need help and training and support and all of that good stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I see all of this happening. And it's a lot of these things are things that I've experienced myself, either firsthand or secondhand through mentorships and training. And there you go. The things that I've identified as challenges for new teachers, possible ways of getting around them. And of course, feel free to reach out. I mean, anybody that's listening, feel free to reach out if you need, some tips or support. But there are challenges, and I think that the way that we fortify ourselves prior to taking on those challenges is really important. And if you can do that in a very successful way, that your development in this industry will go faster, or possibly be more meaningful if you know some of the things that are going to happen to you before they happen, because you can prepare yourself, right? So yeah, that's my list of 10 challenges that new teachers face. Leave your thoughts below, and I'll be back with another episode sometime in the near future. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk and ELT. Want to join the conversation? Head on over to Instagram at Kelly Cuttington ELT and send me a message. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube or Spotify channel to stay up to date, and of course, take care of yourself, your health, your vibe, and your tribe. Until next time.